Welcome everyone to the launch of the MEMORIA Visual Art exhibition, one of the last stages of the MEMORIA project. Feminist Fusion is a community and social arts project in support of women's art and a public dialogue on social justice, and I am Anairda, the project coordinator. MEMORIA 2020 is a sub-project of Feminist Fusion, partially funded by Mayflower 400. The name MEMORIA comes from the Latin root of the word memory. And here we aim to recover our social and historical memory by exploring the complete story of the Mayflower ship's arrival to America, its legacy and social impact, and decide as a community that what we want to do with that memory. In the specific case of this exhibition, the idea was to invite local female artists to journey with us throughout the hidden story of the Mayflower, the one that we don't tend to hear through the official channels and that engages with the difficult topics of colonialism and oppression. Through that journey, the artists will have to allow themselves to be touched by this hidden history and find their own personal approach in order to create their piece or pieces for the project. After more than a year of the MEMORIA project, which was extended and went online due to the pandemic, we had 6 community events where we heard from women speakers from Indigenous, Irish, and African descendant backgrounds, where we held public conversations and games and had our stage filled with female performers. The feedback I received most from the community was gratitude for holding a space to learn and talk about it. However, there was also the subtle feeling that about what's next? What do we do with this truth, or with the truth? And I feel this exhibition has become a perfect match to keep exploring that restlessness. Because at the heart of the design of MEMORIA exhibition lied already the questions. What do artists of this area have to say about the hidden story of the Mayflower? Can art really help us to unveil hidden truths? Can artists help our community to open our eyes? Will the women's voices of this land rise to tell us a different story? And what that story will be? And will we listen? In all these years working with Feminist Fusion and with social arts, I learned that women artists have always something different to say and a different way to express it. Working with these 4 artists has confirmed that in a beautiful and moving way. The art that you're going to see tonight, however, is not the answer to our questions. It's also part of a hidden voice, the voice of women in connection with the darkness and the light of what happened in 1620. The voice of the wombs, the mothers, the carers that don't get invited enough to the discussion or decision tables. These artists have gone through challenges I've seen every woman I know experience just for being a woman, thinking that these are part of our personal path, when the reality is that these are women's collective experiences. The profound lack of will to teach the truth in the official history books only unleashes a profound need from our communities to hear a different story and to hear it from different voices. In the context of this project, those voices belong to women and to all of those who have been pushed aside from the public platforms by the same mentality of domination that today denies their colonialist past. I hope that in the spirit of our social memory, tonight helps us to remember that if we want new visions, we need new ways to allow those visions to be unfold. Women artists need to work in a different way and need a different approach. And to recognize that will help to liberate ourselves from patriarchal patterns as well. Our memory serves a purpose, and for that purpose to be one at the service of communication, the service of compassion, the service of the community, we must be responsible for the consequences of our actions, on working hard on ourselves to not repeat the cruelty that we allowed once as humanity, stamping on the head of innocent ones and our hopes for a humane and evolved human race. Thank you very much to all the women artists and speakers, as well as all the people who have attended our events and who are here tonight. Thank you for being brave enough in acknowledging the pain and the damage while attempting to listen to look into a path where we all can walk together, where we can weave answers together, away from ideas of supremacy and domination. And as the pueblos originarios of the South say, leaving no one behind. Thank you very much. I leave you with curator Gabi Marcellus Tempo.
Thank you, Adriana. That was really interesting and insightful. And I have to say, one of the things I found about this project is working with Adriana and with the Indigenous speakers that we had has been really eye-opening for me, because when you think about colonialism, I tend to think of it from a position of white privilege and guilt, frankly. But people being prepared to communicate the other side to you, especially at often great emotional cost to themselves, it's been really valuable, and I thank you for that and our previous speakers. I've actually, it's slightly different to normal curating, the way I've done this, because firstly I've had Anairda working with all the artists very closely because of her expertise in the subject and her background, and also I've been supported by a wonderful co-curator, Louise Raby, and can you wave, Louise, so you can see, or could you unmute Louise as well so she can join in the conversation, please? Yeah, so Louise and I have worked together for several years, probably about 7 years now, I think, and that began at Flameworks, where we curated and organised quite a lot of exhibitions together. But this has been really exciting for me because it's the first chance we've had to work together on an exhibition with a real political purpose and message behind it, looking at as artists and curators who've worked and developed our careers in Plymouth, actually looking at this political message of Mayflower 400, what people were trying to put forward with that, and then looking at our own response with that. Do you want to quickly introduce yourself, Louise, and your practice as an artist?
Yeah, hi, I'm Louise. I am an illustrator, specialising in children's publishing. And over the last couple of years or so, I've grown incredibly interested in working with social issues within my work, particularly related to social equality and mental health, which is what kind of drew me to work on this project with Gabi. Yeah, I also, as Gabi mentioned, I also work at Flameworks Creative Arts Facility as their current project coordinator, where I've worked on several exhibitions and events, most of them with Gabi.
I bribe her with hot chocolate when I do wrong, on the basis of our professional relationship.
Yeah, so I've worked on a lot of exhibitions with Gabi as well.
Yeah, but I'd say, I mean, this one's been quite different for me, especially in terms of the group we've been working with. Yeah, I mean, we're used to sort of working with very big groups of artists rather than sort of a small, intimate group of women. For me, that's been quite a different experience.
Yeah, that's like having meetings with them and talking to them about their work as we go, rather than seeing it at the end. It's been really good experience, and really it's been educational for me as well, especially since I myself didn't know much about Mayflower either, and we've spoken about how it's not taught a lot in Plymouth.
I want to talk about how we selected the artist, Louise, and see if you can keep a smile off your face. As I said, Louise and I have worked together on a lot of exhibitions, and we didn't have any bad submissions for this exhibition, but yeah, we think alike to a certain extent, don't we? I think we saw there were originally 5 artists. One of them, Natalie Morrison's, had to drop out for personal reasons, but we've invited her to exhibit with Feminist Fusion in the future. But the group of artists, I think we were very much immediately like, yeah, no, them, that works. So, and it's
we looked at them before. Sorry, we looked at them kind of before as well, because obviously you sent me them, and we got a chance to look at them. And we when we had our meeting, we just kind of had the same thoughts, really.
Yeah.
Of who we liked. So.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting because as a group, the artists are quite different, particularly in like the media that they work with. Because like Charlie Thompson, I can't see you at the moment, Charlie, but wave. Charlie's a digital illustrator. She's also quite a young woman, just started at Plymouth College of Arts. And then we've got Stevie Lee, who I think we both knew from, she was involved at Flameworks at one point, which is why we thought of her. And asked her to apply, and she's a jeweler, so again very sort of physical 3D objects that relate to the body. Anne Blackwell Fox specialises in paintings of landscapes for the most part, which again it's so different. And Lorna, from what she said to us a lot, and I hope you don't mind me mentioning this, Lorna, she kept coming out with, I don't think I'm an artist, I make drums, and you know, I run the odd workshop. But I think, and this applies to all the artists though, the results from all those sort of early insecurities and doubts and not having enough knowledge, the results are really exceptional in my opinion. So I don't know how you feel about the work, Louise. Well, you can't really say it's rubbish at this point, can you?
No, I think they've all done amazingly. I think they've all been doing amazingly.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing it tonight.
Yeah. No, you're definitely in for a treat.
Okay, thank you very much. That was the artwork. I hope everybody was able to see. And now we're gonna start with the presentation of each artist. So we're gonna have the same, each artist gonna do a video of 10 minutes video explaining what their creative process was.
Here we are in my garden studio, and here is my wall of sketches that I've been making in preparation for some paintings for the project. I normally go for walks, get inspired by the surroundings, take photographs, etc., and come back to the studio and start painting. With these ones, I've introduced a figure. I don't normally have a figure in my paintings. So my theme is really one about loss and the missing men, that the women were left behind to fend for themselves. So I've included this in these sketches. Just that's gouache, charcoal, ink. What I've used in those. Loosen up. It's a nice way to get started. This sketch is made from charcoal, watercolour, etc. And it's of an image. I went for a walk in Canwood in Plymouth and just came across this structure which seemed totally out of place. And I felt that it looked like a colonial type cabin, and got really drawn to it, so decided I'd make a painting from that. Started to put a figure in on the top, bottom right hand corner, and developed that into a larger oil painting. It seemed totally out of place where it was, and I felt that, what did the indigenous people think about these new structures that are going up on what was their land? And that's where that idea came from. So then moving down, I got an idea about doing the fires and wanted to quickly get some ideas down. Burning fires. This one was inspired by a story in the Mayflower 400 US website, where one of the actors mentioned that the women burnt blankets as they were used in trade for things like pots, knives, etc. But they were betrayed, and the men were actually taken, some taken into slavery and were never seen again. So they burnt the blankets. They didn't want to keep them, obviously. And also this one, I just had an idea that the people mourned their dead by lighting fires, so I thought that was quite poignant. So I'll quickly sketch that one down. Develop that later. These two sketches here are of another lake. Actually, I did this from a photograph that I took when I went to Canada. Went canoeing on a lake, and the trees here are white in this particular sketch, and it represents a dying forest, and it was due to acid rain from the Chernobyl disaster, but I felt that the dying forest was a metaphor for the dying men, and the fact that it had come from so far away, from another country, was really important as well. This little sketch was in watercolour, quite loose, and this one was actually in pastels. So I made another painting from those, and I went back to my black and white paintings of the lake. These are in ink mainly, some charcoal. I like the looseness of the ink. You never quite know what you're going to end up with. Sometimes you're pleasantly surprised. And this one I saw a figure bottom left, and I just wanted to incorporate a figure into this painting to make it look like they were looking out to sea, waiting for the return of their men. Actually, they never came, but there was, you know, always that hope. And this final sketch I did of an eagle feather, which I was very fortunate to have been lent, and that represents strength, bravery, wisdom. If a feather falls from the sky, that represents the sky, the trees, etc. It's kind of like a blessing, really. But the feather mainly represents truth, and that's what's most special. And these are the other paintings I created. This one is on a wooden panel. It's in oil. This one's the same, on a panel in oil. This one's an acrylic. I like the looseness of this one. The blanket's burning on the ground, but also I felt that there was sort of like a bird-like image flapping its wings, and I felt that that was like an eagle. I was quite pleased with that effect, even though it wasn't intentional, but sometimes things work out like that. And this other little fire one came as well. With the people, it just sort of emerged. And it's kind of like mourning but healing as well. I think the warmth of a fire can heal you. This was from the first sketches, the black and white ones. And I've kept the water fairly calm. It's kind of like a memory of seeing that shape of a person in the water, but not there on the land. And this is the forest scene of the cabin being built. And the man in the distance gone, or going, being taken. And the woman on the right being left with her child. And this one here. It's a sense of solemnity, really. Sense of silence. A sense of memory in this beautiful landscape.
The process began with a lot of research, as although I grew up just outside of Plymouth, I was not that familiar with the Mayflower and its many stories. I wanted to honour Native American people, women and the forgotten. I created this piece digitally using my iPad and my iPencil, my two best friends. And over a course of many days and many digital layerings, I managed to gauge a view of the Wampanoag tribe, which, as Gabi said, was the original tribe that the Pilgrims came across in 1620, and how they helped the Pilgrims survive. I have a ton of hidden meanings in my final piece, which I'm going to try and articulate for you now. So 400 years ago, when the English colonialists took a look at the food gardens in Native American villages, they often saw a unique companion planting plan, such as sweet corn, climbing beans, and pumpkins and squash being grown together in the same plot. The term the Three Sisters is now the most commonly known term associated with companion planting. Many northeastern tribes believe that the Great Spirit Sky Woman passed the corn, beans, and squash down to the people as a special gift, assuring their survival. The three crops were considered to be protected by the Three Sisters spirits, collectively called the Di'a Holkau, meaning our sustainers, or those who support us. This is why I chose to create a piece inspired by the Three Sisters Garden, as it represents growth, sustainability, and fertility and willingness to provide and share, which I think is so important always, but especially after the year we've all just had. So basically, it was the Wampanoag Gardens that enabled the early settlers of New England to survive their first winter in the New World. Legend had it that Squanto was the Wampanoag tribesman who taught the newcomers. He was a Native American who acted as a kind of interpreter guide to the Pilgrim settlers at Plymouth during their first winter. And compared to the neatly ploughed rows and fields of Europe, the Wampanoag's corn gardens look suspiciously wild. But for them and other Native American tribes who grew the Three Sisters, their success amounted to a minor agricultural revolution, as there was a way to grow the three nutritious, easy-to-store crops in one space, which, in my arty head, I decided that also showed that if allowed the chance to grow, people can in fact work together with a little bit of patience. It really resonated with me, so I decided to stick with it. In most of my artwork is included plants and beautiful ladies, and my main goal in my work is always to represent women in whatever shape or form. I wanted to depict a Native American woman to be stood in my garden scene, but also to represent one of the Three Sisters. And then she's got a shadow on either side representing the other two, but less obviously. My research led me to find the lovely Weetamoo. She was born between 1635 and 1640 to a Sachem, which means chief. It's a little bit later on the timeline of the Mayflower story, but when I heard about her, I was like, she's my girl, I need to draw her. She ended up being one of the key leaders in King Philip's War, which was an armed conflict in 1675. It was between indigenous inhabitants of New England and New England colonists and their indigenous allies. But basically, Weetamoo's power came from her intimate network of family and friends. One of her strategies to gain power was to marry men who would make her position stronger. She ended up having 5 husbands, each more powerful than the last. Those kinds of unacknowledged power networks allowed women in many different colonial societies to exert influence far beyond what is traditionally available to them. Since Weetamoo would one day become a chief, she endured on a vision quest at the age of only 14. She was sent alone into the woods and fasted until her child soul was killed. She became a skilled hunter, swimmer, and fisherman. She also learned the duties of other girls in her tribe, smoking fish, cooking, and preparing animal hides for clothing. So basically, she was a badass. Weetamoo left her 4th husband, I believe, when he sided with the English, and then she married another Sachem called Quinnipiac. She turned against the land-hungry colonists and banded together with King Philip. She was very gifted in diplomatic skills and also successful in leading an attack against them with over 300 warriors. Eventually, they systematically hunted down all the Indian leaders, killing some of them on sight and convincing others to surrender with promises of amnesty, then executing them. Weetamoo, unfortunately, trying to escape across the Taunton River, she drowned. Her body washed ashore in Swansea, an English town, and her head was cut off and displayed on a pike, which is a rather sad end to a rather powerful woman, but I had to include it. As I was researching all about her, I decided to draw my version of her because nobody ever drew her when she was alive. So it's kind of like my interpretation on her. And I just think because she was native and a woman, her story got lost in all the madness. But her resistance to colonialism was powerful, inspirational, and I wanted Queen Weetamu's story to be heard. So yeah, that's it. Thank you very much.
So you're going to get a bonus with me because I had displayed my art piece on a piece of tartan, and my wonderful daughter Abby decided that wasn't she's a photographer and she is an artist and has been to art school. And so I probably, when I say I'm not an artist, it's because I live with a phenomenal artist who is classically trained as an artist. So she said, Mum, let's go into the woods and film your drums. So that's how you got the beautiful video at the beginning. And so because we've got such lovely footage of that, we have made another little video that will be popped up on here at the end. But Adri and I talked about this, and we thought it might be good for me to talk about the journey of my project. And my name in these ways is Black Fire Horsewoman, given to me by my adopted sister Sandy Leo, Chief Sandy, dancing to Eagle Spirit. But I am Lorna of Lorne. I'm from Dunardry. I'm of the McTavish clan. And going to Canada and spending a lot of time over there with First Nations people, I valued my land and I valued my clan more as I realised how much they lost. And so, having done Canadian studies at school, not at school, at uni in Edinburgh, I was totally lied to. It was a complete farce. This book, and I found the American version on eBay, just tells lies about how few people there were, and it talks in a good way about things like the Indian Act. I was really interested in the picture, the beautiful picture that Anne did. Anne took me back. One of her pictures she knows reminds me of the Seychelles nation where I made my first drum. And but she took me back there to hearing about the smallpox blankets. So one of the things that happened to try and depopulate First Nations was smallpox was put in blankets, and they were taken. They were put with infected people and then taken and taken around. So when we came to this was a bit of a laugh, really. I was Gabi and Adri I know well, and they posted about this, and I just jokingly said to Gabi, well, I do drums. So this then became a bit of a back and forward, and they eventually invited me to take part in this. So I looked at my books and I decided would I use some of that, and in lots of work I've done. This is about the residential schools. The children were sent off to schools. So I've learned lots of loss about how it was to be First Nations from my beautiful friends over there. So I sat down on the floor with a drum hoop that I painted. I painted some drum hoops red. Red's really important colour. I happened to find this buffalo shirt with red, and the red speaks about the Red Road, called the Red Nations very often, and the red is the colour for the missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit and trans people get included in that too. And so I was thinking about Red Dress Day, which was last week, just this very week, and so thinking about that, and so I painted some hoops red. I've already made some drums which are in the advert for this project, which if I grab one of them here, if I'm tall enough. So here's my red hand initial design of political, if you're going to get taken. So this was for the missing women, and those drums are fundraisers for them. And so I painted some hoops red, and then I was sat down on the floor with one of the hoops that I decided I was going to make a tartan drum. A lot of my work's called tartan drum because it combines my Scottish heritage with making drums. So I started trying to make this drum tartan. And because Feminist Fusion is an anti-oppression organisation, it was preferred not to have any harm to animals. So obviously I take a goat and turn it into a drum. So I've probably got about 3 horses, 4 goats in this room with me. But we decided to do something without skin. So this drum was born. So I sat in here on the floor, just trying to make some, looking a bit like my tartan, which is behind me, and making this, painting this, and wanting to make a tartan drum. I was thinking about that, and then I thought, well, I'll maybe try and weave some black on there, but suddenly it became a drum. And so if I get my trusty beater, nothing happens. So the First Nations were silenced. They weren't allowed to sing their songs. They weren't allowed to make their drums. The buffalo were killed because the colonizers realized that if they killed the source of food, of shelter, and of clothing, then the tribes wouldn't survive. So it was another way of getting rid of the inconvenient Indian. So this piece was going to be Tartan Drum, but it's actually become Where Are All the Buffalo? And so I'm amazed how things take their own shape and their own form. So this one here is for the missing and murdered Indigenous women. So this hoop here is a Canadian maple hoop from Canada. And the other hoops are hoops that I get locally. And a lot of my hoops are made in Devon by a lovely guy called Woodpecker Flutes, is his company. And so this red dress is the symbol of the women who are missing. And if you look on YouTube and Google red dress, you'll find lots of amazing artwork and songs around that. So that was the second piece. So then I was thinking about the connection with my clan, and when I was in Canada, one of the things I was able to do was to give a presentation about why I feel connected with First Nations people. My uncle wanted me to give a talk on First Nations issues, and I said I can't, it's not my place, but I can talk about what I've noticed, the connections between my Scottishness and my clan culture. We have chiefs. We had clans until the Highland clearances, until the colonizers from down here moved up north. So this is for my clan. Now, non oblitus is do not forget us, and it's meant to be in death. This is my family crest on my son's leg, and this was a rather lovely present he did for my dad's 80th birthday. He had the family crest tattooed on his leg. Abby's trying to design one for her too. So, but I sewed this into here just to think about bringing the image of skin on. This is just canvas that was printed from a photograph, but having a different way of thinking about skin. And, you know, and even this is very moving, because we think about the idea of scalping, that, you know, people, the things that were done to First Nations bodies and things, just like that lovely young woman talked about how her head was put on a post. You know, this is the reality of colonization. And I hope that I've captured that in these drums. My drums normally sing out for the people, but I hope that these drums will speak in their own way. All my relations I have spoken.
Okay, so my name is Stevie. I'm a jewelry designer maker here from Plymouth, and I trade under the name Botanical Boheme. So I'm a jewelry designer maker, and I usually work in recycled materials such as eco silver and recycled brass. My work is usually inspired by plant life or the connections to how I'm feeling at certain points in my life. But for this project, this was the first time that I was looking into the story of the Mayflower. So even though I was born in Plymouth, I'd never been taught the story in school, as far as I can remember. So this is my first experience looking at this point in history, and it's been reading it from the point of view of the Indigenous people that already lived in America at the time. And it was clear from reading and watching the speakers through Feminist Fusion that the viewpoint of the Indigenous people had been erased, and the impact that colonisation had on the Wampanoag people isn't at the forefront of the legacy. So the idea that instantly came to mind was hidden truths and how to translate this into jewellery. So my very first thought is the idea that I ended up running with and developed into the final pieces that you've seen tonight. So I decided I wanted to share some of the truth of the story that has been left untold over the years, and thought the best way to do this was with quotes and facts stamped into the metal. The whole point was that this was a hidden story. So the finished piece needed to appear as a normal piece of jewellery, but when the viewer looked closer, they would see these statements of truth embedded into the back of the work. We were only working within a 2-week time frame, so I decided on bangles because it would be the easiest thing to enable me to create a really bold statement and hit on the themes I was drawn to in a physical and metaphorical sense. So once I decided on bangles, I had to think about the kind of shape they would be. I make bangles as part of my current collection, but for this project, I wanted the shape to have some connection to the story. I didn't want to take anything from the culture of the Native American people, but I also didn't want to represent the Pilgrims. So in the end, I decided on the place itself and a map of the land. So I traced around 2 maps of Plymouth in USA. So I traced around the map and I played around with the sizing so that I could fit 2 bangle shapes within one drawing. The bangles themselves are made from brass offcuts from a small company that creates lighting fixtures, and the metal is 1.5mm thick, which is more than twice the thickness I usually work with. So the bangles are very heavy and difficult to wear. So once I'd made the bangles, I had to decide what I was going to write on them. And the quotes and facts are stamped onto the metal using letter punches. Now I chose quotes that I had written down from listening to speakers and reading in my research, and these are ones that I felt an immediate connection to, and some facts that have been mistold. I had 7 bangles, so I'm going to show you the text on each, so I appreciate it's quite hard to see through a screen. So some of them will speak for themselves, but for others I just like to highlight why I chose them. So the first one, Tisquantum, interpreter, slave, is to highlight the fact that the only reason the Pilgrims were able to communicate with the Wampanoag tribe through Squanto was because he had been sold into slavery in Europe some years before and learnt English. European disease had already killed 90% of the Wampanoag people. The numbers of the indigenous people who had lived there for thousands of years were declining so rapidly because of Europeans bringing disease to their lands. People don't understand indigenous people unless they're in a story or a myth. They beat our spirit and our culture out of us. This was to highlight that the story didn't end with the Pilgrims settling in Plymouth. The effects that that journey and colonisation had on the indigenous people was far worse than history would have us believe. And the last one, I think, speaks for itself. Extravagant violence is very much a legacy of the Mayflower journey, yet in the last 400 years it has been omitted. So all my text was stamped onto the pieces and I went about forming them. The large cuff was made from leftover brass after cutting out one of the other bangles, and I thought it'd make a great addition to the others and make the weight of them even heavier and more uncomfortable. The brass was polished to the best of my ability. It's a lot of brass and I only have a tiny tool, so I polished as well as I could because I wanted it to represent the idea that all that glitters is not gold. I told you in a previous slide that I purposely made these bangles from thick sheet and that they are heavy to wear. And this was my way of trying to symbolise the weight of the truth. And they are also left unfinished, as we would say in the jewellery term. So I filed the insides just so that my friend could get them on and off without hurting herself. But all exterior points are left sharp and would cause discomfort when worn. But when stacked onto the wearer, the bangles are very heavy and uncomfortable, as it's an uncomfortable experience being faced with the truth and the weight of the knowledge of how my ancestors treated other cultures and how intolerant they were to any kind of difference. It's also significant that the truth has to be searched for within the jewellery. You have to look closely to see the other viewpoint of this period in history, as the version repeatedly told glorifies the white folk. The past year in particular has been a complete awakening to my own privilege, and the more I delve into issues of race and class, and the more I'm faced with historical and present day facts, the more I feel the weight of these truths and want to search for the untold stories and viewpoint of the underrepresented. Thank you.
The first questions to the artist, please. What was your motivation to get involved? in this project? Very relaxed.
I think for me it was I really wanted the learning experience, because especially everything that has happened over the last year, and just delving into more social issues, I was really interested to find out a true story and just, yeah, again, see a viewpoint of underrepresented people. Yeah.
Yes, me too, because I grew up around here and we didn't get taught a lot about it. So I've learned so much during this experience. It's been amazing.
Yeah, definitely.
I've known about the Mayflower for as long as I can remember. I don't know if we ever taught it, but I've sort of grown up with it in Plymouth. And it's something I was really looking forward to and excited about. And I did a project when I first went to college about 30 years ago, and we did a puppetry sort of project, and the take on that was all about the Mayflower and the people on it, and it was just a fun thing to do, but it took on no concept whatsoever about, you know, what really went on or the hidden history. And doing this project has really made me learn about everything. I sort of barely scratched the surface with this topic, and it's been a great opportunity. Yeah.
Definitely feels like that when you watch everyone else's presentations as well. Like, I think I've learned something from every single one.
Yes, you all did so good, by the way. Loved it.
Yeah, it feels like we definitely each honed in on our own little yeah, I think it was really nice to learn from each other tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Lorna, you have something to say about how you mentioned a little bit how you were encouraged to participate. By the way, just to all the people watching, we didn't invite personally, they're not here because they are our friends. We made a public call out, and the women that we knew independently who were doing some kind of art, we encouraged them, hey, we are doing this, make sure that you apply if you're interested. And that's how everybody applied, and that's how the curators chose them. But it was a public call out, so there were more people interested, yes.
I got mine through Plymouth College of Art as well. So someone posted it on the newsfeed board, and I saw it and I was like, hell yeah, baby, want to be a part of that.
So what do you think is the best part and the most challenging part of this, until we have any questions from the public, from all this experience?
The best part has been the collaboration between all the artists, I think.
Yeah.
It's been brilliant getting to know everybody else's work and, you know, talking to people. The hard bit has been doing it all on Zoom, I think.
Yes.
I think it would be great to have all sort of met and got together that way, but for me it's been a really good experience.
Yeah, it's been lovely. I was really dreading having to come on and do these Zoom meetings because I don't like talking in front of people. But it's been such a lovely little intimate group that I actually found myself kind of looking forward to the sessions rather than dreading them, which is definitely a first for me. So
yeah,
the best part has definitely been our weekly meetings. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you think that the networking helped you? Because each one of you ended up doing something different.
Yeah, I think it was just nice to come back and sort of bounce ideas off each other and see where everybody else was at, and sort of see. It was really nice seeing the directions everyone was going down, because it was really clear that we were all going to produce something completely different. But it was nice hearing the stories and these little threads of like history that everyone had picked up and what road they were going to go down. Yeah, it was just nice having a chat twice a week, really, and seeing where everyone was at.
And then also on the group chat, like I learned so much just from all the pictures and stuff that we were sending in and like sharing of the information.
Yeah.
Something I never mentioned when I introduced my drums was one of the drums, after speaking with Stevie, Stevie was writing hidden things in her bracelets. And so I actually wrote something in one of the drum hoops. I wrote the missing and murdered, just the initials of that. And then I wrote non oblitus, which is in the big McTavish one, the oval one. And I painted over it. And so you can only just see that it's there, but it's hidden. And that was inspired by speaking to Stevie. So that was part of my project, that was talking it through, thinking about it, and I thought, yeah, I'll do, you know, and then just thinking, you know, about the hidden. I mean, you know, we know stuff's hidden, but it was like another layer of hiding in the actual piece. And then I've written something on the very back of it, so that's not visible from the, you know, as you see the piece from the front, but underneath a layer of paint is a couple of words.
Great idea, Lorna.
Got it from you, girl.
Great idea, me.
Thank you.
That's really evident, and that's why, in a way, I'm glad that the exhibition is online. It's that all the pieces of work are so multi-layered, and having sort of been through the process with you all, it's fascinating to see how it's developed from one thing to another, and I think you've had the chance to show that tonight.
Anybody else would like to?
I think mine was just trying to control my stress levels, basically. Yeah, I was very stressed in the beginning and I got very scared, but with all of you guys' support, like, you made me feel so comfortable, and like, this is my first exhibition, so thank you very much for letting me do it and being so nice and caring. Loved it.
Another question, people are not really, somebody said no questions, just awesome respect for all involved. And can we all bring some art to share together? I love how our collaborations are just. He said, somebody's making a comment, say, can we all have an opportunity to create some art to share together? I love how the collaboration between the artists has created a sense of community. This is the indigenous way, I believe. For the artists, you know, question for the artists: how will this experience help your future work?
Can I just put a dig in for another part of the Mayflower project that some of us are involved in, because we're part of a coalition, and we also got some funding as Mayflower Our Voice, which MEMORIA is part of, and we are going to be doing some more creativity. I had said I'm not going to do the creative stuff, I'm just going to do the drumming, but hey, I might bag some of the other stuff now. But seriously, there will be some stuff coming up, so look out for that. We've delayed it with the, obviously with the pandemic, but there were a few workshops looking ahead, so that might maybe be a crossover, meet some of those desires for people like Claire to do some art, because we'll certainly be putting on some other workshops in that other part of the Our Voice.
I was going to say as well, in the usual Feminist Fusion sessions, there's always some sort of craft or artistic project going on, like formerly people colouring in squares which were made into a quilt and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that happens, unfortunately, any of the artists except for Lorna have the opportunity to attend on an in-person Feminist Fusion, because we met you all through the pandemic. But we usually have an annual craft. For the MEMORIA exhibition, I made little footprints made of canvas, like this size, so people can sit down on the same table and different people can paint and write whatever they were feeling as the session unfolded, with the speakers and the musicians and the performers. So I have those canvas, but they are unfinished. They have like 4 or 5 footprints, and I'm gonna put them together. We're doing a documentation of this project via a publication and a little video, with Lola Francis from the Glass magazine and Faye West from Photo Now. But yes, today I felt like it was too much to try to show too many things at the same time, but I certainly will share with everyone interested.
I think there are pictures of them up on the Feminist Fusion website, aren't there?
There's just one.
Well, there's one.
There's just one. So that maybe deserves its own, because that's collective creation from the people. So that's what Claire is saying. We are not doing a participatory craft tonight, because we do that also in every online session, which is very funny. How do you, and this is to try to translate the in-person sessions online. You think what was the difficult part of doing online? Might sound a bit obvious, but for you as creative people, what was the difficult part of doing it online? Is anything extra that you would like to share? Maybe other artists are watching and thinking how, if they could do something like that. What, any tips that you will have?
I don't know. I think the most difficult thing about doing it online was I just think we're all a little bit polite, and sometimes we're a bit too scared to talk over each other. So we always take a step back and just wait for somebody to start first. And
yeah,
I think that's been the only difficult part. But apart from that, it's been so good, especially having the WhatsApp group as well to share images and everything. Like, I don't think it hasn't been harder in any sense of making at all. It's just that, yeah, just to get started with our cues of when to come in talking is the only thing, I think. But apart from that.
Any questions? Yeah. Your practice as an artist is affected by your gender. Do you think?
I think it probably is.
How come?
I think it depends on your upbringing. It depends on your parents, your peers at school, your what's expected of you to do. I started late in my art career, and I think that was purely because I was a girl. I was going to get married and have children, whereas my brothers, you know, my father expected them to go out and get qualifications and a really good career, where I don't think that I was ever thought of doing anything other than you know, get a job and get married. But that actually didn't happen to me. So I came later in life to my art career, and I think now I'm willing to start investigating more and being more assertive with what I do. And I think that's what's really good about this project, is that it's taken on a very meaningful subject. And I think that was something that was missing in my other work. I paint a lot of isolated places, landscapes and things, but I think it gives you a voice, you know, as an artist, and whatever medium you use. So although I think it's changing, but it's about you as a person that, you know, develops. And I think possibly men have a stronger, they're more what's the word? I don't know, I've lost it now.
We can use many words.
They're more assertive and they're more confident, I feel. A lot of men are more so, but than me anyway, put it that way.
It really struck me what I mentioned earlier, and what I was sort of saying to Louise, because Louise and I have run and organised a lot of exhibitions together. Never done an all-female exhibition, and it was so much more apparent what women have to deal with, particularly as I said, as Anairda said to me, as the carers of society. Because all the time, all of us are going, I have to look after this person, I have to do this, I have to do that, which I haven't had the same experience when working with a mixed,
of course not,
group of subscribers. Oh, yeah, sounds so smug. I didn't know.
Lorna, you wanted to say something, sorry.
What about women's issues? How long have you got?
Well,
I think, yeah, I mean, I just do so much work with women, you know, and they inspire me. And you know, just seeing women heal and turn around and use creativity as I get to do my day job, which is just awesome. But I'm not allowed to take my drums in to work in the NHS, unfortunately. But there is something about being in a group of women, and it felt really, you know, good to be in a group where I quite like putting myself. One of the reasons I went to Canada in the first place was to go out of my comfort zone. And I think doing my drums as I do them, and they're quite pretty, some of them are quite pretty on the back, and I'm using colours and all sorts, but to be challenged to do something completely different, I think put me a little bit outside my comfort zone, as Gabi's been kind of smiling about earlier. And I think that's a really important thing for women to do, is that just sometimes put yourself outside your comfort zone in a good way that you choose, because then that can kind of build you up for when you might get put outside your comfort zone in a way you don't choose. Because if you're used to challenging yourself and doing something a bit differently, it's really good for us. And so I really valued that in this experience. you know, to think creatively in a really different way about my drums. And so that's been good for my, just to take my boundaries a bit further. You know, I always smile at myself running creative days for other people and say, you can do it, you can do it. So it's good to have people holding me in that space and saying you can do it, because then that informs my work going on. So I think Claire said, how's it going to influence your work going ahead? But I think I regularly try to put myself in a place of learning from people who know more about something than I do. So, and I just think the curation's been awesome, and just having Louise and Gabi and Adri, you know, it's just been such a fabulous way it's been held, and gentle questions, and no question was wrong. Like if we were asking something going along, no question was too big. And so I've just really enjoyed that, and thank you.
I did say in the beginning at the introduction that women, we do things in a different way. I have witnessed it for 6 years on Feminist Fusion, and now Lauren's talking about that it is good to be challenged. What the rest of you think about that? Because how far people can challenge you as an artist, how far is comfortable, how far is positive for you, is a positive experience, and when it's not.
Well, I was going to say, yeah, I really resonated with what Lorna said, because even before I applied for the exhibition, I actually messaged Gabi and said that I didn't think I was intelligent enough to take part in it, which is just such a ridiculous thing to say. And my husband, who's next to me, was like really pushing me to apply. So I don't know whether women just always have that sort of thing.
I said to you, Stevie, that's ridiculous, but I didn't think it would help at the time. And the work produced evidence that was slightly ridiculous, because that's amazing.
Your message back really helped my husband, but I don't know if I always feel I don't feel a lot of self-confidence to put myself forward for stuff like this. So even though I'd be really interested and I would love to do it, I always just have that nagging little thought. But I think this did feel like it was going to be a safe space, because it was all women, and I started talking to Charlie on Instagram and everything, so it just felt like it was going to be a really lovely, supportive little space. So I think as long as you've got good people around you, then yeah, I think it does feel comfortable enough to take those risks and plunge yourself into something new.
What about Annie, Charlie? What about you both?
Oh, I completely agree. Yeah, if anything, it's helped me with my confidence massively. Like we all know that in the first week I was a bit like this. Wasn't really sure what was going on, had a bit of a crazy time, and then after receiving all your guys' messages and support, like, it just made me feel so comfortable, and I can't believe that I ever doubted it, to be honest, because I've had such a great time. It's been amazing, and I felt the same as you, Stevie, like that I wasn't intelligent enough to do this, like, and I feel completely the same, and I'm so happy I did it.
Anne?
I think it's definitely a confidence builder now that we're at the end of it. We've done our little show, and I feel that we've been supported an awful lot, and thank you both for all three of you for.
Yeah, thank you so much for everything.
I think now it gives you the confidence to look at other projects as well that might come up, and move forward with that. So, and also you know, we had a couple of weeks to do the project, and I just threw myself into it. I was lucky to have the time to do it, and I've produced more work in the last 2 weeks than I have all year, I think.
And it's amazing. I remember you posting that you'd done like already 5 paintings, and I was like, oh my god, that's incredible.
I've just done 5 oil paintings. I wonder if it's going all right. And it was like, I've been working on one acrylic painting for like a month, and nothing happened, Dan.
You're amazing.
So it sounds to me, is it true, it will be right to say that to be challenged is okay, but as long as you have a support network,
a support system, yeah. It's such an important thing.
Yeah. So what if you haven't had that support system within this project? Do you think you will have left, or you will have?
I don't think I would have made it personally. I don't know about everyone else, but yeah, definitely a turning point was our Zoom call conversation. Was so good. Like, I think we chatted for like an hour and a half or something, and it literally made me completely change my whole view on everything, which also made me realise I need to learn how to talk to people more. So it's all positive for me.
Very good, and it's interesting to see. May I ask you something there? I really like to ask, since somebody else is asking. Do you think that the piece that you have created is it political art?
I think it's.
You go, Anne. You
go.
Someone.
There's no wrong answer.
I think in a way it's just trying to convey a message to people to actually think about, you know, the meaning behind what you've made, and you might not see that from the painting that I've created, but you might see it in the title, which will make you think about, you know, the underlying meaning from my point of view, anyway. Stevie?
It's definitely the most political thing I've ever made. Definitely since I've had kids. But yeah, as Anne said, I think it just starts to get you thinking. So I don't know if it's not a full-blown statement in your face, is it? It's just something that gets a conversation starting and maybe makes you look at something in a different way.
Nice. Charlie and Lorna?
Yeah, I don't think mine's necessarily political, but I definitely think it's like I think I definitely learned something from it, and I hope other people did. So
Lorna?
Yeah, I mean people know I spout forth politically all the time. I even gave a drum to Jeremy Corbyn, but the one he drummed, I saw for when he drummed the NHS, that was my drum. So that's pretty political, I would say, wouldn't you?
Just saying. She's just saying.
Dropping it in there as you do. But then what I like about these is that they're hidden, you know, especially the Where of the Buffalo, that one that was going to become Tartan Drum. That kind of made itself, and I looked at it and it told me its name. And, you know, job done.
Jobs are given.
That does happen with an artist. So you're just like, oh yeah, that's all right.
That's the intuitive way. What we'll call the intuitive way, right?
What did you say, sorry?
It's a kind of intuitive way. Did everybody feel? Did everybody feel that there was some kind of intuitive direction where you are going? How did it start? Is it the emotion hit your heart and then you did, or it was a series of reflections over different days?
I did a lot of reading, but I definitely did fall into it. Like I think one of the first things I mentioned to you, even in when I applied for the submission, was the Three Sisters and the whole gardening thing. And that was like one of the first things that I fell into. And from that, I just carried on. So I think, yeah, just grasped on what, but it was a sign, obviously.
That to me,
crazy plant lady over here.
That to me gives quite a strong environmental aspect to your image as well, Charlie. It's like these methods of like growing and farming which are more in tune with the earth and how plants work together.
Yeah, just getting back to your roots. I'm all about it.
Oh, that's nice. That's a very nice metaphor. So Anne and Stevie, I'm interested in your process. How does it happen for you? It's like in waves, or it's like a sudden epiphany, or you can sing now if you want.
Mine was instant, yeah, straight away, because I said I was reading the pamphlet that we got through while my kids were watching Peppa Pig, and mine literally came to me then, and that's the idea that I ran with right through till the end. So mine was literally about that hidden truth and how I could represent that in jewelry. So yeah, mine was instant.
Yeah. Anne?
Yeah, mine was as well. I started doing a bit of research on Google and looking at the stories of the Wampanoag people, and I just made an instant collection, and it was loss for me, a loss of loved ones, and you know, to have all those people taken away from you. That's what I really felt.
Got you.
No, I just did really feel it, and I just thought, I know what I'm doing straight away, and the fact that a lot of my paintings have no figures in at all, you know, most of my work have got figures in there, and that was that was what was so different for me. So yeah.
Vanessa is commenting, I love the art. Anything that makes people have a reaction is the best art. Whether they love it or hate, you made people think. Much better than saying, that was nice.
Yeah, I agree.
If there are artists, women artists watching you right now, what would you say to them?
Don't give up. Carry on. Carry on, babes.
Yeah. Also, just get a good community around you. I think community is absolutely everything, whether it's in real life or online. I think my little hub of creative women is what keeps me going every day, and I'll get as far as I do without all those conversations and that support network. So get your women.
Anna, Lorna?
I agree. It's a support of Andy, my husband, and I know my friends as well, giving you support, saying you can do this, and that's the most important thing to me, or my family and friends. Yeah, and
Nice.
and if you've got something to say, then try and get it out there.
Yes, that's nice.
Thank
you, Lorna. What advice would you see to any creative woman out there?
I think trust yourself, trust your intuition, and trust your family. I've just posted the video that Abby and I made of our journey on this work together, and try and do things with each other, try and involve the people around you, because it can bring you closer together, and it can really help get through life, which has its ups and downs, as we know. So, creativity is just so healing. So just go for it. It's a wonderful healing medium.
Thank you. My power question, do you think that art can change the world?
Yes.
Yes.
Why?
Where would we be without it?
How would everybody have got through lockdown without the arts? It just yeah.
Also, why would we keep doing it?
Yeah.
It might be some level of desperation, but again, we all believe that deep down.
But when you look around you, everything comes from a drawing. Every design that you're looking at, every book cover, every glass that's been made, every computer, it all comes down to a design, doesn't it, and a drawing. And it's a creativity that people have that make life interesting, and have a beautiful wall hanging like you've got, Anairda, behind you. It's part of our culture, and it's just part of our expression, and it's a part of that it just makes us, the art, I think.
So you're basically saying that we are surrounded by design, please buy my paintings, yeah?
You can say that if you like.
Yeah,
My art is the underlying message that we all have.
We just said it. Lorna, what do you think the art can change the world?
I think my drum did pretty well in the pandemic. I got drummed by my own drum. How cool is that? As an NHS worker,
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a comment from Abby, say you all did amazingly. I wish I had the drive ideas. I will have had the drive ideas and confidence to get involved. I was pleased to be a small part of it. In the end, though, she's Lorna's daughter. But yeah, I think is there any final sharing that you would like to do with everybody watching before we give a space to our performer?
Thank you for watching.
Exactly, yeah. Thank you, everybody, for watching.
Thank you.
And all your supportive words as well.
Appreciate it a lot.
And if you know any event organizer in Plymouth or in the surrounding areas, please ask them to hire women. As you can see, it's worth it. So yes, very good. So now art is many things. How we express ourselves can change the world. Performance, dance, music, how we live day to day. That's a comment from Claire. Yeah, It's been beautiful. Ladies, it's been an absolute pleasure, and everybody, thanks so much for coming. We're gonna have the voice and the beautiful words from our guest performer, Caroline Hillier. Caroline, please.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm really honoured to be invited to share in this evening with you. I only found out about this project 2 days ago, and I've been sitting listening to what you've been saying, and it's truly inspiring. And I love the sense of sisterhood between you all, and how how you've created the energy and momentum of this whole project. So I've been invited very kindly by Anairda to contribute a song, and I have a song that I wrote about 10 years ago. Oh, by the way, I'm a musician. I live on the moor in the middle of Dartmoor, so I'm quite close to Plymouth, to where this is based. So about 10 years ago, I was traveling on the Pacific Northwest coast, and I was working on a project with some women, doing some workshops that were looking at women's struggle to find a route for themselves if they came from a European origin, to find a route for themselves in the landscape, and weaving that into the grief of the First Nations women who were involved in some of the things that we were doing. So this song came out of that experience, and I'd like to share it with you. It's called Drift and Hollow. The Hollow sister is the woman who's representing the First Nations women, and the drifting sister is the woman who's representing the women who travelled from European origins. And then there's a third sister, the Echo sister, and she's representing the voice of the Earth Mother as she's creating a place where their grief and their understanding of each other can overlap. Thank you. My sister is a hollow tree, a cedar scoured by fierce fires, but still she roots into the land. Her fingers graze the western skies. My sister stands at ocean edge and keens the felling of her people. Their stories scattered on the beach. She cannot know how long she'll weep for. Forest of bones, river of tears, in the song of cedar sorrow. Bright tides of blood, dark moons of fear, in the song of cedar sorrow. In the song of cedar sorrow. My sister is a drifting tree, pale as lichen, smooth as water, cast wide by weather on the sea, until the western waves caught her. My sister rolls in with the dawn, arriving through the glittering shallows. She sets her feet upon the sand. She cannot know what grief will follow. Forest of bones, river of tears, in the song of driftwood sorrow. Bright tides of blood, dark moons of fear, in the song of driftwood sorrow, in the song of driftwood sorrow. My hollow sister walks alone to where her small sweet son is lying. She cuts her braid and burns her drum to curse the cloth that brought his dying. My drifting sister waits alone while her girl child's fevers rage. In vain she calls out to the winds for a ship to bear her far away. forest of bones, river of tears, in the songs of drift and hollow, bright tides of blood, dark moons of fear, in the songs of drift and hollow, in the songs of drift and hollow. My sister is an echo tree, the sacred dust of ancient sounds. She sits beside the ritual rock, and her body feeds the ground. My sorrow sisters hear her voice where they kneel on the cold sand, while their children rise as hummingbirds, spinning free over the wild land. Whisper of salmon, tears of bear, in the songs of drift and hollow, lament of eagle, raven, prayer. In the songs of drift and hollow, we do not carry these tears alone. In the songs of drift and hollow, the echo tree, she draws us home. In the songs of drift and hollow, we do not carry these tears alone. In the songs of drift and hollow, the echo tree, she draws us home. In the songs of drift and hollow, in the songs of drift and hollow.
Thank you very much, Caroline Hillier, Pagan Goddess. Thank you very much. And thank you very much, everybody who has been here. Really, that song prayer make me feel back to the roots. Thank you very much, Anne Blackwell Folks. Thank you very much, Charlie Thompson. Thank you very much, Lorna McTavish-Coulson. Thank you very much, Stevie Lee. And Gabi and Louise for supporting this, and Johana, part of the MEMORIA team, for supporting this project throughout the whole year. And thank you very much, everybody who has been following Feminist Fusion for the last year as well. This is the end of our Zoom meeting. Thank you very much.